for this dedication ceremony. We really lucked out this afternoon. So hi, I want to introduce myself before we get started. My name is Fred Van Vleck. I'm the superintendent of Eureka City Schools. Very happy to be here this afternoon for this dedication of the Don Moehnke Music Building. Just a few people I'd like to introduce as we get started. First off, I'd like to introduce our trustees. First up, we have our board president, Wendy Davis. Our board clerk, Mike Duncan. Trustee Fran Taplin. Trustee Lisa Olivier. And student trustee Melina McKenna. We also have up front our 4th District Supervisor, Virginia Bass, who will be talking here in just a few minutes. So there's a whole list of people to introduce here, so you just have to bear with me for a minute. So, of course, we have the Don Moehnke family. If you could all just stand up for a second and be recognized. I've seen a whole host of music teachers out there, former Eureka High School music teachers, elementary music teachers, middle school music teachers, and of course music teachers from around the county. So if you're a music teacher, if you could just stand up for a second and be recognized. I should have said former and current, and they took the lead and stood up anyway, so thank you for doing that. That's fantastic. I also certainly want to recognize Charles Young, who was just directing our wonderful young musicians in all the different genres over here. So Charles. So also would like to acknowledge Pearson Construction, who was the contractor who built the building, or modernized the building behind me here. And then along with that is our own facilities and maintenance department under the direction of Charlie Bettini back there in the back, who's been doing the second stage of the siding and a lot of the other projects to finish up the building here. So doing a fantastic job. We also have Mark Gaxiola from Matson and Valerica Architects. I'd like to recognize him. And then, of course, I want to recognize, Rex just walked in. I missed him when I introduced the supervisors. Rex Moen, 1st District Supervisor. And then also want to recognize my assistant, Michaelin, who's back there, Michaelin Harris. She's the one really behind everything that's happening here. And then all of her folks that helped her out, Jen Snipes back there, and a bunch of the crew out of the district office. So thanks to all of them for everything that happened. And of course, Leaf and Joe and the Eureka High School custodial crew who made everything happen here today. And then finally, I'm almost done with my acknowledgments. I want to acknowledge the ad hoc naming committee. And so if you're not aware of the process of how this happened, this actually started off with a recommendation by Charles Young. Actually, was the person who brought this forward first. And then the board pushed it off to an ad hoc naming committee to make a final recommendation to the board. And this naming committee was Jerry Scott, Connor Barris, John Murray, Fran Taplin, Charles Young, Mike Bass, Jennifer Johnson, and myself. So if we could have a round of applause for that group. So I want to take a second and also talk about the music program here in Eureka City Schools. That's something that I'm very proud of, that we have done a fantastic job in maintaining. And we still have a music program that starts in the 4th grade and continues on all the way up through high school here. And that's something of a rarity when you look at the state of California, because music programs, unfortunately, have been one of the first things to be cut during difficult budget times. And so I'm especially appreciative of our board in this district and how they've really maintained the music programs. And just as a kind of a symbol of that, if you've ever been in a music class before, could you just stand up? That should be pretty much everybody out there. So music certainly has an impact on our life. And very happy that we're able to provide that continuing support for the music program here in Eureka City Schools. And then finally, before I introduce Jennifer Johnson to come up here, the principal of Eureka High School, and give her a welcome address, I just want to give a special thanks to those of you that live within the Eureka City Schools District for your support of Measure S. Because projects like this, and of course a flagship project that we're going to be breaking ground on shortly after the first of the year, the new high school gymnasium, Eureka High School Gymnasium, wouldn't be possible without your support. So thank you for your support on Measure S and making many of these projects possible. So with that, I would like to introduce Jennifer Johnson, the principal of Eureka High School.
Welcome to EHS, and I think having the last song be the school song was a fitting ending to all of our student members who were playing, so thank you very much for staying after school and being here today to play. I appreciate that. They sound wonderful as usual. So I'm Jennifer Johnson, the principal of Eureka High, and I've had the pleasure of being at Eureka High for a total of 20 years out of my 26-year career with Eureka City Schools. So I taught here for 16 years. And then I went off to be an instructional coach for a little while. I was the principal of Washington Elementary, where I got to experience music at the elementary in the 4th and 5th grade levels. And then back here to Eureka High, and this is my 4th year as principal. So one of the things, I was not lucky enough to work with Mr. Moehnke. He was already retired by the time I came on staff. But definitely, I was here in 93, 94 was my first year. And so there were definitely staff members who had taught with him. His name was mentioned often in staff meetings and about events that had happened on campus. And so his presence was still there even at the time I started my career in the early 90s. And he was a true Eureka High person. He was a graduate, the class of 1954. So he went to Eureka High, was part of the music program as a student, and then went on to go to HSU. And then after he got his credential, Eureka High was lucky enough, because he did a couple of other things first, but then he came back to Eureka City Schools and eventually finished out the majority of his career here at Eureka High. And I think, many of you in the audience, I'm sure, were former students, and that might be the reason that you're here. You were influenced by him as a student. Maybe some of you that are now music teachers, hopefully were influenced by him to become a music teacher. I know we have that with several of our young band members have talked about going into music and specifically to be a music teacher. So I know teachers have a large influence over their student population, and those programs continuing as the youth come up to replace our teachers that are retiring is really important. So you'll see, if you haven't toured the building yet, the modernization really it was down to the bare studs. I have pictures from inside as we were going through it, because I would walk through occasionally to see where they were. And I knew it was always a good day when I came to school and I heard hammering and sawing and noise. And then there'd be a day or two where I wouldn't hear any, and I'd call Charlie and I'm like, Charlie, why is there no noise at the music building? And he would tell me what was happening with ordering or whatever was going on with the construction at that time. So it took a little longer than we expected, but our students and Mr. Young were very adaptable. We enjoyed having them on the stage last year in the auditorium. The teachers actually missed them, because the teachers in the main building loved to hear them play in the mornings when they would come into the building, just as I do, because I always park behind the music building. So the first thing I hear every morning when I open my door is typically the jazz band playing, which is a great way to start my day. So the one thing I did want to talk about is the impact of a teacher, because a teacher, I think often we don't realize how much a teacher impacts a student, and often it's way beyond when students leave you. They might be the kid that was just a real pain all the way through high school, but then all of a sudden they kind of wander back in 4 or 5 years later and they say, thank you. You really made a difference. This is what I'm doing now. I'm married, I have kids. I have kids that I had that now have kids here at the high school, so now I feel really old. But they really, those memories that they had as a student and the memories they have of their teachers really do influence them throughout life. And I know that was definitely a strength of Mr. Moehnke. He lives on through many of his students, the memories that they have of him, the lessons they learned, all of the hard work that they put in. I think that's one of the things music teaches students. That, maybe you're not so good at something to begin with, but if you put in hard work, you put in dedication, you put in the time, and you're part of a group, that everything is going to sound better every time you practice. The more time, the more effort you put into it, to where you get to that final point where you're performing in front of a live audience and you sound fabulous. So thank you, students, for all your time and effort that I know you put in outside of class and in class. And it will pay off later in life, no matter what you do. The fact that you've learned to put in this time and dedication will be a trait that you will definitely be able to transfer to other parts of your life. So enjoy that and enjoy your experience here at Eureka High as a music student. So welcome to Eureka High School, and enjoy the ceremony, and also definitely take a tour of the building and see the difference in the building. It's not 100% done, but we're getting really close. So, but it's been a fabulous renovation, and we're thrilled to now have an updated building that we don't have to worry about quite so much anymore. Thank you. So, Mr. Young, I'm going to introduce Limited Edition, and they are going to be singing the national anthem.
Good afternoon. My mentor at Chico State sat me down in his office that was not only full of memories, but stacked to the ceiling with the comfort of music that had been played over the years. He said, "The long-held belief is those who can't do, teach." He also said, "I believe something else. If you can do anything in this world, anything else, do it. But if you have no choice, and it's in your soul, then teach." The legacy of a music teacher lies not in who walks in their door after graduation, but the souls they touch along the way. Namaste is a Hindu greeting, and it translates to, "The light in me recognizes the light in you." Speak to Don's former students, the parents of former students, and you will hear a constant music theme of his steadfast belief in his students and his steady guidance of them as musicians and citizens of Eureka. He carried his artistry into the community as an excellent musician for many bands and a music director in the church. Legacy also comes from those who precede us. They set the groundwork for what we can do before and after Don. There have been many music teachers, but three were iconic directors of music here at Eureka High School, and their names were Louis Weichenfelder, who directed for decades, Pearl Jackie Jacobson, who taught vocal music, and Frank, the Professor Flowers. Who found his way to Eureka by way of the Ringling Brothers Circus. He had the innate ability to transcribe from memory scores of music for the many bands in which he played or directed, and his musicianship on cornet was country renowned. Louis, Pearl, and Frank, and Don left an indelible mark on our music program, dedicated teachers who shaped music in our school community of musicians. These four will be our first inductees into the Music Hall of Fame. Other musicians and directors will, over time, be inducted, and our booster organization welcomes input from those who might be a worthy addition to our walls. As a music community, we have an awesome responsibility to carry on the tradition of quality music that you hear at Eureka High School. I feel the weight of that responsibility every day, and I invite you to support in the best way I know. Attend a concert. Music doesn't care who you are. It only cares if you can feel it with your whole being. Come and see the light that flows from our musicians. Namaste.
Next up, I'd like to invite our trustee, Fran Taplin, up. As she makes her way up too, I also want to recognize the wonderful musicians you've all been listening to, and I also want to say, keep in mind, this is only the second full week of school this year. What a fantastic job they're all doing for being in school such a short amount of time this year.
Can you believe this weather? Oh, so nice. Always starts when school starts, unfortunately, not during the summer. I just wanted to start out by saying I really appreciated the fact that the band played Eureka High's School Spirit song, because I was beginning to feel that people didn't know that song anymore. And I've always been an embarrassment to my children and my grandchildren, because whenever they would march in a parade and go by my house over on H Street, I would stand up and sing, and my kids were just mortified. Between that and the fact that I seem to know every fireman in Eureka, and when the parades first started, they were, that was practically all that was in the parade, but they used to have a lot of rhododendrons on them, but anyway. And I have one little more, I wasn't going to share this, but I talked to Bill ahead of time and he said, go ahead and share it. At one time, Bill lived across the street from me on H Street. And Bill, if you don't know, is Don's son. And he's a musician also. He plays the drums. Now, my ambition was always to be able to play the kettle drums or the timpani, but I never was able to take music until I was in college. Anyway, Don, before Bill lived there, Ray Posick, some of you may still remember him, he was a very fine musician here and had his own band, lived in that house. And then shortly afterwards, then Bill moved in. And they were both drummers. And almost every night, and it wasn't just weekends, I was lulled to sleep by the sound of the drum, and he would practice in his garage. So anyway, I appreciated it. I went to school with Don Moehnke. Pearl Jacobson was one of my teachers. Louis Weisfeld, even though I wasn't in the band, was a good friend of mine. Don was always a very positive person, and I really didn't get to know him that well because, as I say, I was on my way to Stanford, which I didn't end up going to. But anyway, I was on my way there, and it was all academics as far as my mother was concerned, so I wasn't taking music. Anyway, Don and I really got to know Don when we were in the Humboldt State Marching Band. And even though I wasn't in music, I played an instrument, or I did sing, I was a music minor. And so I went one day to Charlie Fulkerson, who was head of the music department there at Humboldt State, and I said, Charlie, I need 1 or 2 more units to get my minor, and there are no other classes to take. I've taken all the minor classes. And I said, I'm not going to be a music teacher. I'm going to be an elementary teacher, and but I have to get these units, and the only thing that's left is theory and conducting. And I said, I really don't think I'm ready for either one of those. So he said, well, you read music, don't you? And I said, yes. And he said, well, you can play the cymbals. And let me tell you, that was the happiest experience of my life. Dawn and I were in the original Humboldt marching band when Charlie and Mr. Barlow started it, and we really looked snappy, although people laughed when we first got up because we wore those big heavy lumber jackets and those tin hats, and they laughed. Not Eurekans, but when we go on a band trip. So, but as soon as we started to play, they began to applaud. We were good. But that's where I really got to know Don. He was a wonderful musician. He also was the director of the Presbyterian Church choir, and I knew him through that. But one of the wonderful things I remember when I first, it wasn't when I first got on the board, but shortly after I was on the board, we were having real difficulty getting a music teacher. And we got down to almost opening school, and there just weren't any available. We went to all the colleges we knew and asked all the musicians we knew if they knew someone who would teach music, because we were afraid we were going to have to give it up. And so I was walking down the street one day, and I ran into Don, and he asked how things were going, and I said, well, I'm really kind of upset because I certainly do not want to lose our music program. And, but I said, we can't find a teacher. And he had retired then. He'd been probably retired a couple of years by then. And we just had a regular conversation and went on. The next night, I got a telephone call from Don. And he said, I've been thinking. He said, I would like to volunteer to come back to the high school and be the music teacher because you can't find one. He was so dedicated to his students, to his music, to the high school, but of course we couldn't hire him because he'd already retired, but we would have loved to. And probably couldn't, you know, it was would have been a kind of a long stay, but anyway, it brought tears to my eyes, even when I think about it. And I thought to myself, now there is a man who is loved, dedicated to music, and I'm hoping that all of us carry that story with you, because that's real dedication. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to ask Bill Moehnke, representing the family, to come forward. And had the first opportunity to meet Bill when he came to the board meeting, when the board officially adopted the name of the music building. It was fantastic to see his reaction and his family's reaction, and what an honor it is to the family, and we are so proud that we're able to do that. So I will turn it over to Bill.
First of all, I'd like to thank Fred for his wonderful my-op piece in the paper. It was fantastic. And Charles, where are you? You went in. Okay, well, there he is. Thank you again, my friend. He did all of this, really. The family knew nothing. They're remodeling the building, and they might name the building after my dad. How would you feel about that? And I go, wow, that would be awesome. Anyway, he got the whole ball rolling, and here we are today. As I was pondering what to say today, I thought I'd relate my memories of the room behind me that will bear my dad's name. My memories start in 1968, when Dad first started as a teacher here. Before that, he had been at Winship Junior High, and I was in elementary school, but we had this wonderful relationship where he would ask me if I would want to come along, tag along with him to one of his concerts or rehearsals or whatever. Yes, please take me. So I got to go on all those things. And when he was at Winship, I got to know a number of his students there. When he came to Eureka High, a number of those students followed him. So we kept that relationship going. At EHS, the rehearsal room was the hub of instrumental music activity. Dad had the marching band, the symphonic band, and the pep band for those first 2 years. And I tagged along for football games, basketball games, you name it. He was involved in several musicals, Carousel, The King and I, and Bye Bye Birdie are the ones that I recall before I was a student here. And it was actually kind of funny because I was learning to play the drums, and his students said, well, hey, come sit in. There are some pictures somewhere, I couldn't find them, but there are pictures of me playing with the pep band at the basketball game, et cetera, et cetera. It was great, it was wonderful. He would always keep track of every student and myself when we get one of these trips, because sometimes they would let me go on the bus, which I don't think that would be allowed today. Probably liability and all that, but it was a wonderful time. In that room, magic was created. In subsequent years, Dad took over directing the orchestra, which he was immensely proud of. It was as I recall him saying, it was the only orchestra between Santa Rosa and Portland for many years. And at its peak, I believe it had over 100 members, including all instruments, including a bassoonist. Virginia Bass was a bassoonist. He formed the first jazz program at Eureka High School, called the Eureka High School Stage Band. His love and my love of jazz coincided for many, many years, but he started loving jazz when he was a student here at Eureka High. And Louis Weisenfelter, if I remember correctly, and I'm paraphrasing, he told Dad, he says, jazz musicians either become alcoholics or drug addicts. Yet, Louis encouraged him in his love of jazz. Go figure. Well, as many musicians and music teachers realize, the love of music transcends, and if you knew Dad and his personality, none of those things were going to be a problem. He put together a very successful jazz program, and in 1971, the jazz band and the orchestra recorded a record, and somebody has a copy of it here. If you can track it down, it's right there. There it is. Rockin' Brahms at Eureka High School. That was 1971. And I'm going to say with pretty good authority that many of those, if not most of the musicians on those records and all the musicians that played for him are still performing or enjoying music or utilizing music in some form, literally around the world. Literally around the world. 1975, I became a sophomore, and I auditioned for the stage band, and he put me in it. We performed all over the county and had a lot of fun. We also worked really hard because we wanted to please him and us. He inspired us to be great. The next year, 1976, the jazz band was the first jazz band from Moehnke High School to go to the Reno International Jazz Festival. We were performing against, I think in our division, there were 40 or 50 other bands. We placed fourth for our first year. Not bad, not bad. The next year, 1977, my senior year, and our year, we took first place in Sonoma Jazz Festival and at Reno International Jazz Festival. The orchestra that year went to the Mount Hood Festival and received an outstanding performance award for a special performance that we did that featured jazz. And this had never been done before at this particular festival. It's classical. The judges didn't really quite know what to do with this. They were kind of scratching their heads. They knew we were good, so they let us play at the concert that night and gave us a special award. I'll just mention because two of my good friends that were in the band in '77 also were in '78, and the 1978 band also placed first in Reno. And I was there in a different capacity. I was playing in the CR band by then, but I was an audience, and those were extremely wonderful times. This band room was integral to all instrumental music during Dad's 26-year career here. All the groups rehearsed, met, hung out. It was a place to create. When reminiscing the other night with my sisters, I was saying, well, what do you remember? All of us spent time here. We all spent time here rehearsing, creating, enjoying music. And I want to thank everybody that's involved for remodeling the building and putting his name on it. I endeavor to honor my dad's memory by continuing his legacy in music with the Don Moehnke Memorial Reunion Band, which I formed for the Redwood Coast Music Festival. We will be performing in May next year, and Blake Brown and Bob Johnson are members of that group. We've had a distinct honor in being able to perform in his honor as well. And I also perform in another band that Dad and I formed a number of years ago called Nice and Easy. I perform in a lot of other bands too as well, but I want to thank everybody for coming, and it's a great honor. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have our 4th District Supervisor and former student of Mr. Moehnke, Virginia Betts.
Wow, what a turnout. I'm so honored to be here today for when we have a celebration of the dedication of the new music building for Mr. Moehnke. It's a nice change of pace for me. Normally I'm talking about county items and people are yelling at me. So I really appreciate, don't yell until this is over. We have something to talk about. But yes, I was a student and probably one of his biggest fans. How do you even begin to put into words the incredible impact someone has had on so many young lives? He was truly one of a kind. As I was thinking about what I was going to say, I realized that if it weren't for a decision I made in 9th grade, I may never even have known Dr. Moehnke. Well, there you go. Mr. Moehnke. Okay, I'll call him Don. I'm so hard to call a teacher by their first name. But I was in 9th grade and I was playing clarinet. And I wasn't very good. I mean, I was okay. But I looked at high school and I thought, I can be in the band, but I really want to be in the orchestra, because that was the cool place to be. And they went on some really cool trips. That didn't hurt. So I started thinking also that, man, nobody plays bassoon. There's an opening. You got to take advantage. So I learned how to play bassoon. And so by the time I went to Eureka High, there was a place waiting for me, and probably one of the best decisions I made in my life. I can't imagine having had a life any different than I had. I was pretty lucky, especially some of the teachers and especially Mr. Moehnke. It's hard to talk about him, quite frankly. I get a little choked up. So anyway, in the summer of '79, he actually took the orchestra to a competition in Hawaii. And there's a few of us in the audience, at least one, yay, and 2, okay, hey, there you go. I thought he lost his mind. Now that I thought about it, it's like, seriously, you take 60 or so teenagers and let them run amok in Hawaii. And there are some chaperones in this crowd also, I do remember, and I'm really sorry. But truthfully, we were all really mostly pretty well behaved. And, but that's because we respected Mr. Moehnke and he trusted us. You know, he was a lot more than a teacher to me and many others, I'm sure. He was a mentor, a role model, and as I grew older, someone I considered a good friend. I knew he was always there to listen, and he believed in me even when I didn't believe myself. When we were in Hawaii, he told me, I knew I was going to have to do this, but I was trying to pretend I didn't. I had a solo in a competition in Hawaii. I was mortified, petrified, but he made me do it still. But it was okay, I lived through it, and that was a really good lesson for me, because believe me, there's a lot of things today that still petrify me, mortify me, but you just do it. So, you know, he taught me to believe in myself. And through the years, I was fortunate enough to maintain a relationship with him, as well as a lot of his family members. And even his group played music at my different campaign functions, and he even played at my wedding. And that actually was a very special moment. He was always there for me. Unlike myself, some of his students excelled in musical careers beyond high school. And one of our classmates, Roger Treese, is a great example. He went on to become a Grammy-nominated composer, arranger, producer, and singer. He wanted to be here today. He currently lives in LA. But we were talking over the phone, and he wanted me to share his thoughts because Mr. Moehnke really heavily impacted his life. And what he said perfectly captured, I think, what many of his other students felt as well. So these are his words. He was fun, friendly, and supportive, but he was also committed to the truth, even if it was uncomfortable. He joked, but he never slacked on any principle, musical, or human. He had this poster on his wall, and it was titled Toucan Tango. One day, he brought the lesson home to me when I tried to blame a fiasco on someone else. He said, "Raj, it always takes two to tango. You had a hand in this, and you're never going to grow until you learn to take responsibility for your part." He showed love by showing interest. And his favorite story was that he remembered once after a Christmas concert, everyone was leaving and he was talking to Dawn. And then the missus came up and he said, okay, Raj, gotta go, my sweetie's here. And he took her hand and they walked away. You could just feel the love. So, I think, that comes from someone who didn't have a really good start in life, and where he's at now, Mr. Moehnke made a difference. And I think he made the difference in a lot of people's lives. Students didn't just like Don. We respected him, we loved him, we idolized him. He wasn't just our teacher, he was a counselor, a confidant, a father figure to many. He was a guide to what's right, just, and fair, because a lot of that is missing these days. And he was probably one of the most trusted people in school. And for many kids, that's really important when they don't have the support at home. And I have to say, what I miss most is his most amazing smile. I still carry that with me to this day. And, he truly left an indelible mark on so many lives, and he's so deserving of this honor.
All right, now it's time for the official dedication so the trustees can make their way up. And as they make their way up, I know it's kind of difficult to see the slideshow that's over here today. So what we're going to do is we're going to post that online, and we'll provide a link off of our Facebook page so you can clip on there, and then you can take a look at some of those fantastic pictures. And so I'd like to introduce at this time Wendy Davis, our president of the board.
Now we're all here. What a pleasure. On behalf of the Eureka City School Board of Trustees, it gives me great pleasure to present the plaque dedicating the Eureka High School Music Building as a Don Moehnke Music Building. As a board, it was our honor when we took formal action on May 3rd, 2018 to make this dedication official. As an example of how special this is, in all of our tenure on the board, and Fran's been here 20 plus years, this is the one and only building naming we have done. It takes a very special person. As you have heard today, Don is that special person. Mr. Young, drum roll, please.
So now we're going to turn it back over to Mr. Young for some final student performances. And as we end up this afternoon, this will be concluding the show. Feel free to take some time. The music building is in use now, so you'll see lots of instrument luggage. That's probably not the right name for it, but whatever you call them. Inside there because it is being used, but please feel free to go inside and take a look. First time this building has actually even really been touched other than routine repair and maintenance since it was built in 1939. So it's fantastic that we're able to do this and really make this difference. And then also, please come up and take a closer look at the plaque. This is what will be mounted on the outside of the building. So, Mr. Young, take it away.
The last song we're going to play for you is called Quiet Courage. It was written by Larry Dean, and it was dedicated to his wife. But I think more than anything, it stands for so much of what Mr. Moehnke meant to this school and to our community. welcome. Thank you, guys.
This is the jazz, the stage band, one of the first ones. And then, wow, look, see, he came to Eureka High in 68.
I'm so proud, so pleased for
68.
family.
This is 71. So it's, thank you, early bands. Yes.
Well, I live here now. Yeah, we're back. It's my story. I just keep moving away until I move back. So no more moving away.
Everyone in the community came out today.
Absolutely excellent. You know, it's a testament to my father's legacy and his the impression that he made on literally thousands of students over the years that he taught. Thank you to the entire community. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Hey!
She was here and she was with my daughters the next day. Oh, yeah, I know. I got one.
Let's see. We did audition for we did that. And then after that, Dad was music director for some productions we did at CR. We did music man, we did